Thank you so much, Gene. Thank you, everybody, for coming in. I know this was short notice. I just want to give you a little bit of background about what just occurred. So after the news over the weekend, Stephanie Curtis, the program director here, got in touch with us at the Middle and said we should collaborate. And within a matter of hours, we had said, okay, why don't we do a town hall in Minnesota? And so I arrived very early this morning, and we pulled this together. We're going to record this like a radio show. It's going to be it's going to be 3 segments and a billboard that we're about to record. You're going to take part in it. We want to hear from you. That's what this is all about. And then this is going to air nationally tomorrow and throughout the weekend in cities all over the country. It's going to be broadcast on YouTube as we do it, and we'll have it in our podcast as well. You heard a little bit about the Middle. I started it a couple of years ago. This is what it's all about, is elevating the voices of people in the geographic, political, and philosophical middle and bringing that to the country. And the show now airs on almost 500 NPR stations around the country. So this will be hopefully heard by a lot of people. And I think that's important. I think that's what people want to hear right now from you right at the center of this storm. So we're gonna record a quick billboard in 59 seconds or less, hopefully 56 or so. Once we get started, there are going to be 2 people here with mics, actually right here and right there, okay? So if you want to comment, which is what we would love for you to do, just get in a line in either of these aisles, and they're going to hold the mics when we get to the audience participation part, which will be just a few minutes after we get started with the first segment. And if you see that there are like 8 people in the line, that's probably as many are going to get. I mean, we're going to probably get to maybe 10 to 12 to 15 people maximum in the time. So if you see that there are already that many, you missed your chance. But otherwise, we hope you get in line because we want to get to a lot of you. All right, so we're going to record first of all, let me just ask our engineers, for my purposes, for my show, are we recording? Great. Okay, and everything sounds good. And if you can run me an up clock, starting in like 5 seconds, we'll do this billboard. All right. In 3, 2. Welcome to a special edition of The Middle, coming to you from the UBS Forum at Minnesota Public Radio in St. Paul this week. I'm Jeremy Hobson.
And I'm Catharine Richert from Minnesota Public Radio News. The city of Minneapolis has become ground zero for the Trump administration's immigration enforcement efforts in recent weeks. And now, following the fatal shootings by federal authorities of Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good, it could be at the leading edge of a change in policy.
This hour, we're going to hear from Minnesotans in our live studio audience about what they've been through, their hopes and concerns, their message to the rest of the country, and what they believe it'll take to heal and move forward.
So stay right here. A special edition of The Middle in partnership with Minnesota Public Radio starts right after the news.
Great. We did that in 47 seconds. Excellent. That was the easy part.
It's radio magic behind the scenes.
Okay. So again, you're welcome from this point forward to line up if you want to be a part of this. And we're going to start this first segment. It is 12 minutes and 59 seconds. I might go about a minute or a minute and a half longer. Oh, you were pre-poured. Okay. I'm just going to do this. All right. We're going to talk to you. So you'll just be, we'll go to you. You can say, I mean, I would say this, the shorter and sweeter you are, like getting to the point, the easier it will be for us to get more people in and make sure everybody gets heard. But, I'm not asking you for 20 seconds. You can go on, take a minute. And then we might ask you a follow-up question. Hopefully we will. Okay, here we go. Welcome to a special edition of The Middle in collaboration with Minnesota Public Radio News. I'm Jeremy Hobson, coming to you from the UBS Forum at NPR Studios in St. Paul, Minnesota. And Catharine Richert of NPR News is here with me, as is a live studio audience of Minnesotans. And Catharine, the Twin Cities where we are have really become the center stage for the national conversation about not just immigration, but also our democracy.
Yeah, in the last few weeks, Minnesotans have seen thousands of federal agents descend on the Twin Cities specifically, but of course this is happening throughout the rest of the state too. We've seen ICE enforcement in Rochester, where I live, Wilmer, up north as well. And with the killing of Alex Preddy and before that Renee Good, it's sparked protests, it's sparked demonstrations in the streets and other acts of violence too.
And we should note, ICE, even though there's been a change in tone in the last few days from the Trump administration and a new leader in Tom Homan, the border czar, coming into Minnesota, and Greg Bovino, who was here before leading, being removed from his post, ICE is still here.
Right. We've just in the last 24 hours documented additional ICE enforcement. So, the headlines, the conversation that's happening sort of at the higher levels suggests that the rhetoric is toning down. ICE agents are going to be ostensibly pulled out of the state, yet I still think there's a great deal of fear. And obviously what we're documenting out there in our communities sort of contradicts that narrative a bit.
Well, and I was able to visit the memorial to Alex Preddy, where he was killed in South Minneapolis. Not far away from that is the memorial to Nicole Good, where she was killed in South Minneapolis. And then not far away from that, by the way, is the George Floyd Memorial from many years ago, which is still being maintained, creating, a national movement that occurred many years ago around Black Lives Matter. What does it say that all of this is happening here? Is there something to the fact that this is all happening in Minneapolis, and are they connected?
Well, I would say it's really hard to watch what's been happening in Minneapolis without thinking about the civil unrest that happened after George Floyd was murdered. That felt more shorter lived, I guess, and really it was a conflict between local law enforcement and protesters and the Black Lives Matter movement then, and state leaders, right? Here we have a federal action within our state, and it's much bigger and much more widespread. I think to kind of understand and maybe connect the dots a little bit, you'd have to go back to the 2024 election when Governor Tim Walz was at the top of the ticket with Kamala Harris, obviously trading barbs with President Trump at the time in a very public way. And then more recently, of course, we've had these questions around fraud in Minnesota involving some of our immigrant communities, and that fraud is being litigated in the courts right now. So you tie all these things together, and while maybe someone who's listening from in a different state might wonder why Minnesota, I think for us living here, it actually makes a lot of sense that there's been a lot of focus on Minnesota.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up the fraud issue, because I think if you watch certain media, that you're hearing about that all the time. But that actually led Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, who was the vice presidential candidate in 2024, to drop out of the race for governor. And we've just gotten news, in recent days that Amy Klobuchar, the senator, the Democratic senator in Minnesota, is now going to run for governor. The politics in the state have changed dramatically in the last few
Right.
years.
I mean, it feels like a lifetime ago, but it really, I think, was 3 weeks ago that I was on the air doing a live show, and Governor Tim Walz had just said, I will not be running again for a third term. I think Republicans felt like they had a really good shot at getting the winning the governor's race up until that point. He dropped out. Amy Klobuchar's name quickly came up as someone who might run, and then Renee Macklin Good was shot. And I think what we've seen just in the last few weeks is that Republicans here locally have started to really criticize what they're seeing happen on the streets of Minneapolis. It stands to reason that might be one reason why we're hearing the Trump administration say we're going to take a step back here a little bit.
So you mentioned that you have been taking calls from people, and this is what we're here to do now, is to hear from Minnesotans and see what they think and how they're feeling about this. But what have you found as you've been hearing from Minnesotans over the last few days?
Wow. Well, I mean,
we should note that a huge line is forming
this is
now,
wonderful.
which is wonderful. We're going to hear from many of you just momentarily.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Okay, so I think we are still hearing that there's a ton of fear out there, whether you're someone who has been in the streets documenting ICE enforcement, protesting, but also people who are afraid to leave their homes for fear of being detained. The economic impacts of that are enormous. Mm-hmm. I also think that in the midst of all of this, and maybe these are headlines that aren't being made nationally, I hear hope, and here's why I hear hope from people. People are finding community in new ways that they couldn't have anticipated a few weeks ago through mutual aid efforts. There are people who are coordinating over Signal and other social media to give people rides to work, to walk their dogs, to offer legal services, just to bring food. And I'm hearing like this gives me hope. This makes me proud to be Minnesotan right now.
All right, well, let's hear from some Minnesotans. And if you could just say your name and where you live, and then tell us what you think.
My name is Janelle Austin. I live in South Minneapolis. My home is 2 blocks away from where George Floyd was lynched. It is 4 blocks away from where Renee Nicole Good's life was stolen, and it's about 5 minutes away from the memorial of Alex Preddy. This morning, ICE was heavily present in our neighborhood. Our group chats were going off, and neighbors were showing up. Just because the president say he's pulling back doesn't mean we see that on the ground. The grief is heavy. Where I work, Rise and Remember, we're housed in Pillsbury House and Theater. A 2-year-old child was kidnapped in the house behind our office buildings. So we're feeling it. We're feeling it deeply.
I can hear in your voice that fear. And I feel like as we're weeks, months out from this, that fear is probably the thing that we're still going to be grappling with.
I think it's grief more than fear.
Yeah.
We're not afraid. We are standing up to ICE as neighbors. We are feeding our neighbors. We are helping them pay rent. We are helping the businesses, and we are not afraid, but we are grieving.
What are you grieving?
We are grieving the death of our neighbors. We are grieving the loss of people being kidnapped. We are grieving the economic turmoil of people not knowing like how they're going to be able to pay their rent. We have suffered loss after loss after loss after loss after loss after loss here in Minnesota. We had the shootings, the school shooting last fall. We had the death of the Horman family. We've had Dante Wright, Amir Locke, George Floyd, Philando Castile, Jamar Clark, and then the list goes on and on and on. And we have not been able to come up for air because the government keeps killing us. I need people to understand that we are not afraid, but boy, are we exhausted and are we grieving.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming up. Let's go to somebody over here.
Hi, my name is Vivian Mims, and I am a native of St. Paul, Minnesota, in the Rondo community. We've had 4 generations. I just was given this beautiful book by BIPOC Foodway Alliance, Mecca Boss. These are the 4 generations that lived in my house until my mother passed in August. BIPOC is a cooking and organization. I'm one of the chefs, as they call me, right? So I got up here to tell you that the impact that all of this has had on my family, she passed in August, has been, I'm not sad about, because I believe in God, and I don't think God makes any mistakes. Even though evil is ramping through our neighborhood and our country and our world right now, I know that love is going to overpower all of this in some kind of way. I'm staying in place in my home. I have a great surrounding of friends and people I didn't even know cared, bringing me food. My daughter was accosted. My oldest daughter, who's RN at St. John's, she felt just livid and had a mental break about the nursing, the medical environment. Right now, my granddaughter's 3. What is it going to be for her? You know, my parents bought the home I'm in during the Jim Crow when they moved up here in the 50s, and we're still in it. But the community has changed. I'm hoping and I'm praying that it brings back neighborhood. You know, I listened to the young lady there where there's so much diversity and so many different cultures surrounding me. When I grew up, it wasn't just a community after they put in 94, but it was a neighborhood. You knew your neighbors, and now you're not. It's coming back to that because of the tragedy. And I think that that's a wonderful thing, okay? It's traumatic, what we're going through, but we'll be stronger on the other end. And I love Minnesota. I love NPR. Thank you for doing this today. And I hope everybody can keep love in their heart and know that it will overpower and overcome all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Joe Landsberger, and for the sake of your listeners, I'm an 80-year-old lifelong resident of St. Paul. In fact, a neighborhood not far from this location on 7th Street. I'm also a survivor of the Vietnam War protests, the AIDS crisis, and so, in a sense, that activism informs what's happening today, I think. That we are not just passive in these crises. Last year, I published a history of Minnesota, and I didn't talk about the big names of the state. It was rather the immigrant communities that came and formed not only this city, but the state. It's the oldest neighborhood of the state, the oldest commercial strip of the state. And one of the things that struck me in doing the research was that there were 12 different languages that were spoken on West 7th Street, right down from this hall. And when you think about how did they communicate with each other, there was never any riots or whatnot. It was a very diverse community. And what I did is, with the election of Trump, I thought, I have to do something. And so I dedicated all the money from the sales of the book and the stipends to nonprofits that I saw would definitely be in need, anticipating what Trump's up to.
Can I ask, have you gotten involved at all with your history of activism in the past? Have you gotten involved in any of the protests around what's happening now with ICE, or have you stayed away?
Probably once or twice a week, I'm standing on a street corner.
Wow. And are you worried for your safety when you do that?
I'm not really concerned because what happens will happen. I remember one particular protest out 7th. I was leaving, and there were 3 guys with a fancy kind of camera, not dressed for the weather, videotaping me as I was walking towards them. And I knew what was happening, but I didn't miss a step. I just kept going right for them and right up to that camera.
Catharine, we're going to get to more members of our studio audience, but I do wonder, as you've been speaking with people on the air, listening to callers, have many people been actually taking part in the protests, or have they been staying away?
I think we're hearing from a lot of people who are maybe protesting for this first time or becoming constitutional observers for the first time. And there's a distinction, too. There are trainings going around all over the state, including in my community of Rochester, where people are learning how to document ICE enforcement. And it's something they never maybe thought they would ever do. So in some ways, I think this is igniting activism in communities and in people who maybe, a month ago never envisioned doing that.
All right, well, stand by, because we're going to get to more members of our studio audience in just a moment. I'm Jeremy Hobson, along with Catharine Richert of NPR News, and you're listening to a special edition of The Middle from St. Paul, Minnesota. Okay, great. Now we move to segment 2. This is a special edition of The Middle, coming to you from the UBS Forum at Minnesota Public Radio in St. Paul. I'm Jeremy Hobson, along with Catharine Richert from NPR News, and we are joined by a live audience of Minnesotans. Catharine, as we record this, there's been a new video circulating that shows Alex Preddy many days before he was shot and killed, spitting at ICE agents, kicking an ICE vehicle. There have been some online, some on the right especially, who have said, well, that changes the narrative around him. What has the reaction been here?
I think generally what I'm hearing is that video is unconnected and irrelevant to what happened this past Saturday when Alex Preddy was shot. Different day. We've interviewed many people now who knew Alex Preddy, and he was a nurse at the VA. He was known for being caring and thoughtful. So yeah, I mean, I think people who know him are saying it has nothing to do with the fact that he was shot.
Mm-hmm. Let's get back to the audience. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, thanks for being here. My name is Robin Hickman Winfield, and I'm a proud fifth-generation Minnesotan, a long line of social justice activists, fourth-generation St. Paul. And I come here standing in the stead for the young people who are traumatized. I'm a teacher at Gordon Parks High School, and that's a school that's named after my great uncle, who I promised I would keep his legacy alive. And the gentleman in the last segment talked about history at a time when history is being erased. History is our armor. And for the young people that I teach that walk in the footsteps of Gordon Parks, history is their armor. My scholars are fortified by the history of Gordon Parks, and my Latino and Somali and Hmong students are virtually learning because they can't leave the house. Last week, I played the song in class before some of the students decided not to come to school any longer, a song by Donny Hathaway, "Someday We'll All Be Free." And I just want to quickly read the final project of Julio, who didn't come to class, but he decided to finish his final project. As a Parks scholar, my vision of peace is to have everyone work together as a community to fight the justice and what's right for ourselves and each other, to be free and view equality as those superior to us, the people who would view us as nothing more than monsters thrown in cages. Peace will prevail, and the real monsters will be revealed. And then Alicia, whose uncle chose to move her to Wisconsin because he didn't want his baby girl to be snatched up. Oh, and again, and Julio's family cannot leave the house. Julio's afraid to leave the house, but Alicia wrote, as a Park scholar, my vision of peace is a world where innocent people are protected and communities do not have to live in fear. Peace means safety, justice, and accountability, especially marginalized families. I believe that peace exists when systems are meant for people to not be harmed and be treated with dignity and humanity. And these are young people who couldn't find the words before they found themselves not treated with dignity. Yeah. And my Hmong student, Civic, was coming to school every day before he saw the picture of a Hmong man taken from him, his home, in boxer shorts and Crocs. So we must see about these young people. We have to pay attention to how the young people are being traumatized, but legacy will be the light that will lift up Minnesota as leaders and a beacon for the nation.
I am curious, with students not coming to school, obviously we know what the impacts of that are from our experience with the pandemic. What has your school been doing to support these students when they are afraid to come? Like
many of the awesome schools throughout Minnesota, definitely in St. Paul and Minneapolis, the teachers are rallying around, the parents are rallying around. We're collecting food, we're delivering food to the homes of our families. We're making sure that they're taken care of, because that's what we do here in Minnesota. We are a beacon for the nation. We're making sure that our students but to cry with a 17-year-old young man who's telling me, Miss Robin, I'm the only one in my family who can leave the house. And I mean, it's just heartbreaking. My neighbor across the street was snatched up. My young Hmong friend who's caring for his Hmong mother was snatched up, and he volunteers at an organization that serves Black people. Mm-hmm. This is real. And I wonder, what is this truck that keeps parking across the street? And then yesterday, he was snatched up. It's very, very personal. And I can't get off this mic with saying the hope piece for me. For 10 years, I walked and went to Perkins every month with a former Minnesota Republican governor and former Congressman, Governor Al Quie. There is hope. We can sit down together and walk together and learn from each other. That's my hope statement. So let's start coming together and figuring this thing out.
Let me ask you, Catharine, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, Catharine, she brings up the former Republican governor. This is a state that, yes, it has gone for the Democrat in all of the last presidential elections in recent memory, but also it's a 55-45 state. There are a lot of
Our
Republicans
legislature
in
is
Minnesota.
totally split. Yeah, that's an indication of that.
We have started to see Republicans in Washington and here in Minnesota start to question the severity of Operation Metro Surge, the surge of ICE agents into Minneapolis. Are you seeing the politics change on the right in the state, or are there still many who say, I'm happy that this is happening?
So let me break that down. I do think in the last few weeks, we have seen some notable Republicans in Minnesota come out and question the severity of this crackdown. I would say most notably Chris Madel, who was a GOP candidate for governor and actually was giving legal advice to Jonathan Ross, who shot Renee Macklin Good just a few days ago, pulled out of the race and cited what is happening as the reason why. He said it was a disaster, his words. All that being said, nationally speaking, some new polling suggests that people are growing concerned about how immigration enforcement is happening. We're seeing some Republicans in Washington start to question this, but by and large, I still think the party is fairly much in lockstep on how things have been going there.
Let's get to another commenter from the audience.
Peace. My name is Tish Jones. I'm a poet. My family has been in St. Paul for 5 generations. I'm the 4th generation. And what I'm interested in just offering are 2 things. One is that there is a nefarious and violent, albeit often unintentional, erasure of the work that was done during the moments after George Floyd was murdered. There's this way in which there is a comparison that does harm to the question of how Minnesota, not why Minnesota, but how Minnesota. If we ask that question and think about how we can do some power mapping and power building that will demonstrate a continuum and the action and the work that happened in this state. So, and what I'm getting at is we're more unified now. We're building differently. We have more systems. All those things happened because of the work that we did after George Floyd was murdered. The pods that we created, the establishment of mutual aid systems that we created. Those things, I think we're asking the sort of really cute and commercial question of why, right? But the how is the piece that's going to actually help the nation that really answers the question for the nation of how Minnesota was able to resist in this way. And even that moment after George Floyd was murdered, right, it was a quote unquote resurgence of the movement of Black Lives Matter across the country, whereas we saw, similarly to what we're seeing now, we saw other states and countries begin to protest in solidarity with our state because of what was happening. And the groundwork that we laid is very important. And so the second point, which is connected to that, which is we have to bring forward the leadership of queer Black femmes and abolitionists, because it was an abolitionist movement that started to create those systems that 6 years later, we are all utilizing. And those are the systems, the mechanisms, the language even that folk are utilizing right now that make us feel more unified.
Can you say more, when you're looking at the landscape of how those systems are operating right now in real time, thinking back to 5 years ago, years ago, what are you seeing that you think is similar or directly an outgrowth of what was created?
You've named it. You've talked about mutual aid.
Yeah.
The establishment of successful mutual aid methodologies came directly out of the work and the labor that we were doing. When you talk specifically about what's happening here in Minnesota, communication channels, understanding how to use underground chat systems, understanding pods within neighborhood groups, all of that education and intelligence came from abolition communities and queer Black femme leadership that was doing that work after George Floyd was murdered, and organizations, groups, collectives that were established to continue that education, to provide training for before this happened, before December 1st, when ICE decided to occupy Minnesota, right? Those trainings were happening within our communities. That education was happening within our communities. We were building multicultural solidarity movements to provide those kinds of educations, those kinds of opportunities to meet this moment, and the how is critical.
You're talking about resistance. What about the idea of unifying after the fact? Could you sit down and have a lunch with somebody who is an ICE officer right now? Or do you think that, or is there no healing between the two sides after that?
For me personally, at this moment, while ICE is still here, snatching up families, babies, etc., that's not my mission. My mission is to work with the community to connect them with resources, to keep them safe, to continue the education around liberation, freedom, and resistance. That's my mission.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name's Charlie Anhut. I'm a 69-year-old white guy from South Minneapolis. First of all, I'd like to just mention you referenced the video of Alex, 11 days
Right,
before
yeah.
he was killed. I see those two videos, and I see a very angry man the first time, and the video starts immediately when he's really angry. Something happened before, because in that other video, there's a very calm man. So I think this is like in the NFL, in the football, they're looking at the guy who responded to something that happened beforehand. I look forward to somebody else coming out with a video that shows the whole event. Anyway, that's not my point is I've been involved for over 12 years with an organization called Isaiah and Faith in Minnesota. We're a power-based organization, and like the young lady who just spoke very eloquently, what I am disappointed about in news media here and nationally definitely, is the focus on the events and the confrontations, and then quickly the leaders both the local leaders as well as national leaders, pointing fingers at each other as if this was something that resulted from them, as opposed to the grassroots organizations that have both collaborated in the last 5 or 6 years, but some of which, including the one that I'm involved with, has been involved for 15 years or so, and has built a community that has responded to this. I mean, that's what's really generated the response that you're seeing, and I wish they would report more about that. It just looks like it's like, quite frankly, the governor and the mayor haven't had anything to do with our response. We're not responding to them.
Are you proud of your leadership at this moment?
Political leadership? Locally, I am, but they're just.
What do you think they need to do?
I'm not running for I'm a former Republican who walked away from the party about 15 years ago, because if I ever see a real Republican, I'd vote for them, but they're all gone. I don't have an answer for you. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is a common thread, common thing we've heard. There's a lot going on in the courts right now. This eviction moratorium is being discussed to you to help people who are stuck at home and can't pay their rent. But definitely something we've been hearing a lot about on our airwaves. Yeah.
If I could just mention one more thing. I'm in contact with old high school buddies, and one of them lives in Florida and has informed me that he knows exactly what's going on in Minnesota. He's of the other ilk. And because of the way the news media is covered, he doesn't have a clue what's going on in Minnesota. And that's unfortunate, and it would be helpful.
Well, let me just ask you, though, because you are speaking to a national audience here.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that you would like the rest of the country to know about what's going on in Minnesota that you don't think that they know right now?
That this is all grassroots. This is all neighbors taking care of neighbors. This is, it's community. And like a previous questioner asked or mentioned, frankly, I hope, but I believe that we'll be even stronger as a result of this, because of all the ties that we're forced to make with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. My name's Felicia Perry. I live in the North Minneapolis neighborhood. I currently work in the historic Rondo neighborhood. My question, I'll just get straight to it. As audiences, and particularly I'm noticing white audiences grapple with, well, as we all grapple with the misinformation, and white audiences are grappling with this newly felt oppression, over-policing, occupation. I'm wondering, how does NPR help listeners understand the historical roots of these systems, particularly how anti-Blackness has shaped them, and guide people towards credible, contextual reporting?
Okay. I can
Yeah,
try and
you're
take
the
that.
NPR representative.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So just a few data points from the coverage we've been doing this week. This was a subject that came up last night when we did a call-in show, and the night before, and we had two historians on who I think did a really good job of connecting the dots. One of them put it really well: over 400 years of struggle in the United States, right? Thinking about the role of slave catchers during the Civil War, and similarities to what we're seeing today. When it comes to credible news, this is something that we think about literally every second of the day in the newsroom, and especially, I will say, in a moment when a lot of what we're getting is on video, which, as it turns out, you can't trust everything you see right now. How do we vet this information? I'll give you an example of how our photographer, in the moments after Alex Preddy was killed, quickly identified the woman in the pink coat who now has come forward to tell her side of the story, to interview her, confirm that the video that she took was authentic, and we were comfortable putting that out there. But this really gets back to the push and pull of live information, right? That we're inundated with videos and information all the time. We have to sort through it for our audience, but they're not always coming to us, right? They're online too and seeing a lot of things, and it's a huge challenge. So we're doing our best, but it is very hard, and I think that's certainly something that we're paying close attention to.
Yes, sir, right over here.
Hello, thank you guys for having us and opening up this space. My name is Elvis Rivera. I'm a resident of Brooklyn Park. I'm also a first-generation immigrant from Guatemala, also a naturalized citizen, and a person whose personal tagline is corporate by day, community activist by night, and servant leader always.
Even before all of this.
Even before all of this.
Okay.
And I'm also a father of two. My 18-year-old is on the autism spectrum. My daughter is 15. They are Latino because of me, and their mother is African American. And what I want to contribute to this is just, it seems as if we're across the nation living in two different realities. And as they try to explain the deaths of both Alex and Renee, it seems that folks tend to believe that if you don't antagonize or if you just do what they say, everything is fine. And what I want to contribute is something that happened to me literally just this morning. At 6 a.m, I woke up to an ICE truck sitting outside of my house as my kids were going to school, as my kid was staying home before his parent-teacher conferences. And they wouldn't leave. They didn't come out. They didn't knock on anybody's door. They just sat there to intimidate, I assume. As we're having our parent-teacher conferences, we can barely focus on what's going on, his education, because we're worried about what we can see outside of the window. And we informed the teachers about what was going on, and we all teared up. That's the reality that we're living in. Even when you're not out there protesting, even when you're not quote unquote antagonizing, they are intimidating. They are coming to our front doors. They stole a safety of the refuge of my home for God knows what. I am involved in community. I have been protesting. I don't know if it was an intimidation tactic, but that's the reality that we're living in. And I want to appeal to the listeners' humanity. You know, we are people first. We all bleed the same, and we are here to request and continue to ask for the respect that we deserve as human beings.
What is it going to take for you to feel safe going about your normal daily life?
To be honest, I'm not staying in my house for safety reasons. I don't feel safe with my son who's on the autism spectrum. He's feeling extremely heightened from not just what happened with George Floyd, which he identifies as part of the African-American community, as I mentioned, but now this, right? And so my job is to make sure that they are safe first and foremost. And I believe what it's going to take is for them to vacate. They don't have to be here. They're not going after the worst of the worst. As I mentioned, I'm a naturalized citizen. I'm biased, of course, but I don't consider myself to be the worst of the worst. Why are they coming after us? Right.
Well, let me just ask you one more thing, because you are a naturalized citizen. Are you feeling that you have a responsibility right now to like carry around documentation with you just in case?
This thing?
You've
Absolutely.
got your passport
You
with
has
you
a
right
passport,
now.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Which is insane. It's insane.
I know people personally who were born in the United States but fear they would be targeted by ICE just based on how they look, who are doing the same thing right now.
And we're being
and outside the Twin Cities.
And we're being intimidated further by conversations of taking away the naturalized citizenship, right? This is all an intentional intimidation tactic, in my opinion, and that's what we're living through day in, day out, whether you're naturalized citizen, green card holder, et cetera.
Thank you so much for coming up. Stand by, because we're going to take a short break. We're going to be right back with more of a special edition of The Middle from the UBS Forum at Minnesota Public Radio in St. Paul. Great. And we've got our final segment here. Now, we're going to get to, I would say, maybe, let's say 6 people maximum. So if we can just, I'm sorry that I'm going to have to do that. If you want to, wrestle each other and say, oh, I want to go. But we're 3 on each side, I think, is what we're going to get to. I don't want to make you stand in line if you're not going to make it. The other reason why, by the way, we can't go on too long is because we have to turn this around, edit it, and then I've got to do my live show at 8 p.m. tonight. So we don't have a lot of time. Okay. Welcome back to a special edition of The Middle, coming to you from the UBS Forum at Minnesota Public Radio in St. Paul. I'm Jeremy Hobson with Catharine, Richert from NPR News. We are joined by a live audience of Minnesotans. Don't forget, by the way, you can join this conversation and sign up for our podcast and our Substack newsletter at listentothemiddle.com. Catharine, just amazing comments so far from a real diversity of people, a former Republican, a naturalized citizen who's worried every time he goes outside. I think one of the things, though, just before we get back to the audience, that I'm still kind of wondering is why Minnesota? There are more undocumented immigrants in Texas and California. Certainly, there are much more dangerous cities than Minneapolis in this country. What do you know about the reasons why Minnesotans have been bearing the brunt of this surge from ICE under the Trump administration?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned earlier, I think this probably goes back to some degree to the 2024 presidential election, where Governor Tim Walz was chosen to be Kamala Harris's running mate. A lot of vitriolic language traded on national TV and debates during that campaign. And then more recently, we have found our courts are litigating cases of fraud, most notably in a COVID era program that was meant to help feed kids who couldn't access food at school. And that fraud is real. It's being litigated in the courts. And it is, most of the people who have been charged so far are members of our Somali community, all of whom, I should point out, the vast majority of the members of our Somali community in Minnesota are naturalized citizens. So what we saw late last year was an intense focus all of a sudden from the Trump administration on these allegations of fraud in Minnesota. Obviously, we had seen ICE enforcement in other blue cities like Chicago,
right.
Portland. And then, we had Governor Tim Walz drop out of the race, and things just really seemed to amp up right around that time at the start of the new year. So for people outside of Minnesota, it might seem like this suddenly happened. I think for us who are watching the news here and paying close attention, it felt like a trickle, and then all of a sudden a bit of an explosion.
Right. I'm glad you brought up the point about the Somali American community, because, almost all of them here in Minnesota are either citizens or have a green card. They are not people that would be able to be deported by President Trump or by the administration. Yeah,
and I just want to point out, too, late last year, the Trump administration said they were specifically going to increase ICE enforcement and target Somali Americans in Minnesota. So that's kind of how this was being talked about just in late 2025.
All right, let's get to some more members of the audience. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Victor Bisakin, and I'm from West St. Paul, Minnesota. Thank you for doing this. I'm going to touch on, some of them touched most of the things I wanted to talk about. One, about the traumatizing our children. I'm married to a Mexican. We have mixed kids. My son goes to a Spanish dual immersion school, and it brought sadness to my eyes, our eyes, when he says, asked, where are my friends? What's happening? And then he even brought the name. We're talking about Bovino now in class. We're talking about ICE. And Dad, what's ICE? Mom, what's ICE? So the sadness about that is just, it's really sad. And then talking about traumatizing our people, the trauma this is causing, and then the recovery from that. We're not even talking about when this is over, what's going to happen, how are people going to get past this. But I also want to touch on what my brother Elvis says, the humanity. The lack of humanity is what kills me. I posted oh my God, forgot his name, the young, beautiful kid, blue jacket, and I posted, is this the worst of the worst? And guess what happens? People are laughing, and they're laughing about that situation. So, and I'm like, what is going on with humanity? And he touched on that. That's what breaks my heart. And lastly, I enjoy our politics, and you touched on that a little bit. This morning, there was a hearing about the federal law enforcement here in Minnesota, about 3 hours. And the sadness, the story, I mean, if you had a heart or soul, tears of stories of what's happened to our people. And then we have, I hate to say this, Republicans questioning that. And so my question is, how long, how much? I mean, what do we have to do to get both parties to even sit down and acknowledge, let's call it what it is. This is racism. They're targeting people that look like me or brown or this is racism. Let's call it what it is. It's not about fraud. Yes, we started about fraud, but it isn't about fraud. And you just said there are other states who have more frauds than us. But here are people families ripped apart because they look brown, black, and it's really sad. But what do we need to do to get our politicians to sit down, acknowledge this is wrong? They couldn't even do that today. The Republican Party could not do that today and say this is wrong. No, it's all about we got to help federal agents do their job.
I thank you for asking that question. I'm afraid to say I don't think that either of us are going to be able to answer that question about
if we could, then
yeah, if we could. Wow. But I appreciate that.
In the room, ask their question, since you keep talking about Somali American.
Sure. Yeah.
Person who had a question and had to sit down. I would love to hear from them.
I'm a Somali person. No, that's okay.
Okay, hang on one second. Let me just, I need to make that work. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Hi, how are you doing? My name is Zach Abdi. I'm a resident of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I came here as an immigrant in 1998. So I've been a resident of the state the majority of my life. And, for one, as a naturalized immigrant, I'm scared. I'm worried, and I have some criminal history in my past of just minor things, but I'm worried, is that going to get me on a radar to be fastly denaturalized? And what does that mean for me? And just like my brother here, I just started carrying my passport with me just in case, right? Which is weird to me, but I'm just amazed by the amount of hypocrisy there is going on in this country, where the vice president is married to an immigrant woman, the president is married to an immigrant woman. The president has committed millions of dollars worth of fraud from a children's organization, right? So I'm going to echo what he said, and I think it's racism cloaked in this protection of taking away the worst of the worst,
But you're worried about denaturalization, which is not even something that really happens in the U.S., but it's been threatened. But you're actually worried that it could happen.
And it's is there something is that allowed to happen, or can they do that? I mean, in some cases they can. And I think, this administration, I would have put it beyond them to find some sort of way to push that forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi,
Yes, ma'am.
my name is Mindy DeHate. I've lived here for 7 years, native New Yorker. I was raised a Republican. At 17, I turned into a Democrat. But there's a lot of questions and a lot of comments I want to make. But as a business leader that has done business around the world, where I've seen the effect of our inhumanity and our blatant racism within our own country affect businesses, I just want to say there are a couple things that I think that's happening right now. I think it did start with Governor Walz and Trump, and these are two boys that are like in a little fist fight that can't think about people outside of themselves. I think that we were targeted for a couple of reasons. One was, look at the weather. You know, it's very easy to stand or be parked outside of a car when you think people in Minnesota aren't going to stand up for themselves. And so I think that made us a really easy target.
You're saying that the federal government thought that it would be too cold here for people to actually go out and
really
demonstrate.
Just think about it.
It is very cold. I will say that.
Just think about it. And when you look at our GDP and the amount of money that these criminals are contributing to our country, I think that would be a great number for you to report. All of these immigrants that are doing jobs that white Americans, quite frankly, don't want to do, that give us a great life. And we're trying to target those people and say that they're criminals when they're contributing to our country. And by the way, what effects do they, or what great, what are they getting back from the government? I think that it's a really easy formula to look at. What are they contributing and what do they take away? And I don't think that's been brought up. I haven't seen it on any newscast. So we're trying to get rid of these criminals, but what are we doing to these families? They're contributing to our country.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we've seen the economic impacts of restaurants closing for extended periods of time. It felt like a trickle at first, and now we're hearing many reports that because people are afraid to leave their houses, it's affecting all sorts of businesses, large and small. I want to go back to something you said earlier, though. You mentioned Governor Walz and President Trump trading barbs. How do you feel about Minnesota's political leadership throughout the last few weeks?
You know, I think that for me, I'm kind of right in the middle because I want to believe in leadership. But, you know, I have family all over the country, in New York and Texas, and friends globally. And no one really knows what's going on here. We know what's going on because we're living in it. I had a friend call the other day and over FaceTime and said, you know, have you come in contact with someone personally? Has this personally affected you? And I laughed. This is an educated woman. And I thought, yes, it's affecting us. This is horrific. This is really not, again, about party. This is about just being human. We see it in the streets. People are making foolish decisions. Someone tried to help a woman that was falling, and he gets shot and killed. These are, I think, you know, the people that are being highlighted are the wrong people. I think that we talked about it today. Let's highlight community. Let's talk about what we can do for each other. And it's more than political. And I think, to your point about, you know, two grown men that are disagreeing about something, this goes beyond politics, being liberal or conservative. It goes far beyond that.
I will say, in terms of things being highlighted, so many people get their news now from social media, and social media works by highlighting the things that make you angrier, not the positive stories.
Precisely.
Typically.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that comment.
Is this thing on? My name is Mecca Boss. I was born and raised on the east side of St. Paul. I live in South Minneapolis now. I want to make 3 short points. I am co-founder and director of an organization called BIPOC Foodways Alliance and Immigrant Kitchen. This is the organization that Vivian mentioned. Immigrant Kitchen was and is an organization that was set up to provide immigrant women who are home cooks an opportunity to tell their own stories through the lens of cooking. BIPOC Foodways Alliance is an organization that's set up to break down cultural barriers using food as a tool. And we brought in Immigrant Kitchen at the beginning of Trump's rhetoric about our immigrant friends and neighbors, and we decided to add that program to allow our immigrant communities to speak for themselves and tell their own stories. And now we are in the very unique position of not knowing how to do our work, because we are afraid that if we if we provide a platform for folks to tell their stories, will this create a target on their backs? And this is also a time where these stories are more crucial and important than ever. So we're not really sure how to tell our stories. The second thing is my partner's name is Sean Sherman. Some of you may know him. He's a very important, well-known Native American personality in the Twin Cities. One of his employees was kidnapped on Monday morning trying to get into work at gunpoint by ICE. Sean is in Washington, D.C. right now addressing Congress. He got up at 4:30 in the morning to get on a plane to talk to Tina Smith.
The senator from Minnesota.
Yeah, excuse me. He doesn't know where his employee is. He is a Guatemalan man who's here legally with no criminal background. And we don't know where he is. And as one of our colleagues said today, this is not a missing cell phone. This is a human being. He has a heart condition, trying to get his medicine to him. And then lastly, I will say, my sister has 3 little kids in a Mexican charter school. They have not been able to go to school for the past 3 weeks because it's too dangerous. Attendance is down by half. 4 parents have been taken from the pickup and drop-off line. In one case, it was both parents of a child, and now that child is in custody. So this child doesn't know where his parents are. So for folks who want to say, and I have a friend who sat down in my living room the other day. She's got a partner who's a white man who lives in the suburbs and is disconnected from what's really happening. And he says to her, no, they're getting the worst of the worst. And I said, well, you can tell your partner that one of Sean's employees was just kidnapped, trying to go to work at the most prominent restaurant in the Twin Cities at gunpoint. They had him in the van within 4 minutes. And my sister's peers' parents are being kidnapped from the pickup and drop-off line of their school.
Can I ask you, there was a change in tone, at least from the Trump administration, with Tom Homan coming in and saying, we're going to go to the jails, we've made a deal with the leaders, and we're going to start to do a drawdown. And do you have any confidence that things will change?
I don't know what, I'm an English major and I'm a writer. I don't know what the term drawdown is, but I feel like they're trying to use language that tries to trick us. What is drawdown? I don't know what that means. I've never heard that term in my life. Tom Homan doesn't mean anything to me. I don't need a white man in a suit telling me what's going on. I don't believe these people. I don't believe anything that these people have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Ron Harris. I live in Minneapolis. I'm a former Chief Resilience Officer for the city of Minneapolis. And it's really important to understand this moment in context. Number one, we asked the question, why Minnesota? And I think we answered it decently, but I think there's other things to think about. Politically, the state has voted blue the last 50-something years. We are also, though, a symbol of good governance, good education. We're good for business. We're good for workers. We're diverse, right?
Good public media, by the way.
Excellent. Seriously, excellent public media and excellent independent journalism.
Yeah.
Right? They are trying to make us a model and a symbol, or we are a symbol, and they're trying to tear that symbol down. Donald Trump understands symbols more than any leader elected I've ever seen. So you have to look at this through the lens of political theater. The point is to disorient. The point is to confuse. The point is to intimidate. The point is to scare. The point is to separate us and think that our power comes from the individual, not community. The only way that we lose this is we fall into that. What you're seeing right now, you're seeing the best of Minnesota, and we're pushed backs against the wall. You're seeing people connect with each other. That's how we push back, is we remind them that we find our strength actually in community. The reason why, and folks have said this earlier, the reason why we're responding so well to this has been infrastructure built years before this moment. We didn't stop organizing after George Floyd's murder. We kept training and kept organizing and kept building up leaders, right? The last thing I'll say is Trump is personally obsessed with this state. He says that he won Minnesota in 2024. I ran the Harris campaign in Minnesota in 2024. I know exactly what happened in that race, right? He hates Ilhan Omar, he hates Tim Walz, and again, he understands symbolism, and he's trying to show the rest of the country progressive policies is a no-no, diversity and immigration is a no-no, working together, all those things. He's trying to tear us down. So for the rest of the country, this is the blueprint for fighting back.
Let me just ask you a question since you've been in government. One of the things that Republicans have been saying about Minnesota is, well, if it wasn't a sanctuary state and a sanctuary city and they just worked with us, we wouldn't have this problem. How do you respond to that?
There's an on-air answer and there's off-air answer on-air. You know, first of all, in Minneapolis, I'll speak to, there's only 600 officers. There are
Police officers.
Police officers. There are 3,000 ICE agents, and many of them concentrated in Minneapolis. So even if the cops locally stopped doing their job and just backed up ICE, there'd be so much happening in our city. Like, what about the rest of us who live here, who pay the taxes? I've had conversations with police officers and some police chiefs trying to get them to see that this is a moment to widen what we call we as Minnesotans. So instead of being law enforcement versus the people of Minnesota, including law enforcement versus ICE. And I'm telling them because, look, you got these untrained agents coming in, getting $50,000 bonuses. Where's your bonus? These folks coming here with no accountability, but you have all this accountability. And so what I say back to them is the people of Minneapolis come before helping out federal agents terrorize our folks. It's not true that the reason why things are going this way is because cops aren't working with us. Actually, the reason why this is going this way is because the resistance is working. They would not be sending Homan and Vance and Bovino and Bondi and more resources and more money if they were winning. They would not be lying about videos if we weren't winning. But we are, which is why they're deploying these tactics.
Thank you so much for that. I wonder if for our listeners who are hearing this in other parts of the country, what do you think is the lesson from Minnesota to other places that may see a surge of ICE agents? I mean, we already saw now that after, I guess, a phone call from Senator Susan Collins, who's a Republican, they're not going to go to Maine as they plan to. But what do you think is the lesson for other places?
Well, Minnesota is often lumped in the category of flyover state. We're often, sort of forgotten in the discourse about our nation. And I would like to think that if people are watching what's playing out here, they're seeing a lot of what we're talking about today, which is neighbors helping neighbors, networks of people coming together who might not otherwise know each other to do what they can to support people who are afraid to leave their homes right now. I really do think that's like the headline that's not being broadcast on national media right now. And I also think that there's a level of optimism here that strikes me every single day when I'm talking to people that you would not expect.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Kay Paranis. I live on the east side of St. Paul. I'm a Minnesotan by choice, been here since 78, I think. And I work in the field of restorative justice and peacemaking circles. And so this question of how do we come together is near and dear to my heart. Get back to that later. But first I want to say how important I think the contribution that he just made is, that your analysis of why Minnesota was missing what I think is the most critical piece, is that Minnesota represents the positive side of populism that goes way back. The Democratic Party in Minnesota is not called the Democratic Party. It's the DFL, Democrat Farmer Labor, representing the coalition that came out of popular voice. And that's the thing that's terrifying to Trump, is the idea that the people can actually have voice and can speak up and can organize themselves to resist autocracy of various kinds. But the thing that was on my mind when I came up is that I want to challenge the media around, and it relates to this idea of the middle or the idea of neutrality. So I want to point out that when there's an imbalance of power or an imbalance in following the rule of law, then neutrality reinforces the imbalance. It reinforces the imbalance of power. It reinforces the imbalance of following the law. And then I want to point to a very specific example of the media not being clear about what is and isn't true. So this claim that they came here for immigration and around investigating the fraud, right? I have not seen a single thing in the media that challenges that. Mm. You investigate fraud from a desk. You investigate fraud with accountants and IT, and then the people who go out and pick somebody up that they've clearly identified, and the lawyers carry it out. It has nothing to do with guns and troops on the street. And the media keeps repeating this statement as if it is a legitimate statement. I think it's really important that you pay attention to what you're repeating that's not legitimate.
Thank you. I think we've got to move on because we are running out of time, but thank you so much. We've got one more person here. We only have time for one more, I'm sorry.
My name is Latasha Jennings Dedina. I'm a resident of East St. Paul, east side of St. Paul. I'm a U.S.-born Black woman, for listeners who may not be able to see me. One of the things that I wanted to share today is my experience and my journey in getting here in this physical space today. Like I said, I live on the east side. It's a very multicultural, diverse. I love my neighborhood. I looked out my window at around 12 o'clock today, and I saw a blacked out, tinted out Chevy Malibu out of state plates, just sitting outside my front door. The first thing that I did was take photos, and I sent it to my husband, and I let him know, I think I see an ICE vehicle outside of my house, just so you know. The second thing that I did was text it the same thing to a trusted friend, and I said, this is what's happening. I want you to know. Not for any other reason than if for some reason I get picked up. For some reason, I want someone to know that that's what happened. I wasn't comfortable leaving my house today because I didn't know if just walking outside of my house would be a justification for some reason that they might approach me. I saw my neighbor across the alley as I was looking out one of my other windows, and I immediately ran out and I said, hey, I've seen this vehicle. They've moved a couple of times. They've just been sitting here for about 45 minutes now. I am trying to leave my house. Will you watch? Will you just stand by and be another eye and watch to make sure that I could get here today? It felt like suppression. It felt like what they're doing is meant to keep us scared and afraid so that we don't get out and we don't tell people what's actually happening in our neighborhoods. And in relation or in answer to the question of does it feel like things are ramping down here? Absolutely not. It feels like those are words that are said as platitudes, and the reality on the ground is that they're just as present, more present in my neighborhood and on my block today than I've ever seen. And I've witnessed people get detained back in October, actually, right outside my house. And it looked like these were just two gentlemen on their way to work. And unmarked vehicles surrounded them, dragged them out of their truck, and detained them and left their SUV on the curb.
Let me ask you, do you make a difference in your own mind in terms of the fear that you are articulating here between an unmarked vehicle of authorities, maybe with masks on, and a police car with uniformed officers inside?
It is different. It's oddly strange too, in that I'm critical even of our local police and how they treat Black and brown communities in the Twin Cities, and yet I feel safer if I see a person in a uniform and I know that it's a St. Paul police officer or a Minneapolis police officer. And there have been instances where I've had direct contact with officers that have not been safe, that they've shown direct behaviors of intimidation that's been directed at me. And even in that context, I trust still, and that trust is low, but I still trust my local law enforcement more than I trust in the fear or the fear what could happen to me at the hands of a federal ICE or Border Patrol agent.
I'm wondering if that this trust you described, is that because you can see their faces, they're wearing a particular uniform? Is it because ICE is here and maybe 6 weeks ago you might have felt differently?
It's because you can see them. They're not trying to hide. Their names are on their uniforms. And it's not just that. It's that the Twin Cities, and especially here in Minneapolis, there's been a lot of work to push our local law enforcement to respect our constitutional rights and accountability mechanisms that through a lot of the work that's been referenced before in the aftermath of George Floyd, where not because necessarily they want to, but community has pushed them to do and be better. And it's not perfect, but we still see them If I ask for a badge number from a Minneapolis police officer, I know more often than not I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
Or their name, and I'm going to be able to follow up and make a complaint if they do something. I have no idea who these federal agents are.
Yeah. Well, and it gets to the point that we've heard a number of times this hour, which is people using the term kidnapping to describe what authorities are doing to people. Thank you so much for that. One more super quick right over here.
Super quick. Hey, my name is Arna Landrum. I live in South Minneapolis, 3 blocks south of George Floyd Square. And I find myself wrestling with this notion of the middle and coming together from different sides to meet in the middle and move together and heal. When just a couple of days ago on Threads, someone posted, "Can we just get back to regular police brutality, please?" So when people are talking about meeting in the middle, I just would like everyone in Minnesota and your national audience to really interrogate for themselves what the middle is. And if that's like coming together, like closer to the side of repressed communities, then that's a beautiful thing and we can work towards liberation. But if we're talking about moving to the middle so that things are quiet and you don't see them as much, that's the same thing. I'm done.
Well, I want to thank our audience so much, as well as my co-host, Catharine Richert from NPR News. Catharine, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Jeremy.
And also a big thanks to our team here at NPR News, Stephanie Curtis, Tom Campbell, Evan Clark, Ellie McKinney, Ellie McKinney, Andrea Pierre, Sean Belcher, Jeff Jones, and Elisa Kuznetsov, thank you. And Elisa Kuznetsov. The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, Samber Mustaz, Brandon Kondratz, and John Barth. Thanks to our satellite radio listeners, our podcast audience, and the hundreds of public radio stations making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. Thanks for listening. Great.